4 years ago, or are you worse off? But I'll come to that aspect in just a moment, because this interesting thread that we've started on Ukraine and China, I want to delve on it for a moment longer. Aviruk, is Kamala Harris likely to pursue the same policy of Joe Biden on Ukraine and on China, in your appreciation?
Look, I'll just address the Trump question first and come to what you're asking. Firstly, if he really wants to be tough on China, Mr. Trump needs to stop printing his Bibles, the Trump Bibles, in that country. Okay. Secondly, when we speak about inflation, one of the key factors that have contributed to runaway inflation for some time is not just the supply chain issues that you had after during COVID, but also tariffs. And Trump's policy seems to be to raise tariffs everywhere. Yes. Now, eventually, somebody is going to pay for those raised tariffs, and it's not going to be the countries that are being supposedly victimized, or whatever you might call it. Just like Mexico never paid for the wall, China is not going to pay for tariffs. It's the American consumer who will pay higher prices for everything. So this simple understanding needs to percolate through to anybody discussing economics in the US at the moment. That tariffs, according to economists across the board, will be disastrous. They'll be to the tune of $4,000 a month, a year, is what the middle class is going to suffer as a result of this policy. Now, okay. in terms of the question that you originally asked, which was, will they see, every president will have a new a framework to work with, and like I said, I think I'm underqualified to talk, greatly on sort of foreign policy matters. However, I will say this, that Biden, and it's through his political career, was always been a man of compromise and of trying to reach across the aisle. He's done that in a number of aspects of his career in politics. Kamala Harris is perhaps not as predisposed to compromise as Mr. Biden. So she will chart her own course. However, it will be a thought-through, informed course. One may not agree with her, but it will not be like, let's send Jared Kushner to the Middle East and solve all its problems. And what he does when he looks at the Gaza Strip is he sees beachfront real estate. And I kid you not, that is exactly what he said. So there will be a seriousness to the engagement in foreign policy affairs if we get a different administration than Trump's.
Okay, or will Biden's policies, or Barack Obama's policies, or Bill Clinton's policies, will they, Professor Chilani, will they be continued? Because, I had Ambassador Kamal Sibal on the broadcast with me, and he said her relative inexperience would mean that a lot of people may be guiding her, and perhaps it'll be more than Biden, it'll be the Obama and the Clinton administration officials who will be calling the shots.
You're right, Gaurav. She's an unknown commodity. She hasn't spoken up on foreign policy issues. She reads her speeches from the teleprompter. She's so beholden to the teleprompter that if she speaks without the teleprompter, she often creates an embarrassment for herself. So being an unknown commodity, nobody knows how she will perform as the president if she were to be elected. But it's clear from her own election campaign that she relied heavily on the Obama staff, the Obama campaign staff. And some people are saying that if she enters the White House, it'll be Obama term 4, this will be the 4th term of Barack Obama, because Biden, as his cognitive decline became increasingly apparent, ceded decision-making increasingly to members of his inner circle. And that was one of the reasons why in the last couple of years, the relations between the US and India came under strain, because Biden wasn't in charge. His inner circle, especially people like Blinken, were leading the charge, and Blinken was using the human rights card against India. And as you would recall, that when Modi went in September to the U.S. to attend the Quad Summit, on the eve of his arrival in the U.S., the White House hosted Khalistan militants and senior administration and intelligence officials to brief these Khalistanis. This was quite a move, because it was quite a brazen move. The Indians did not react to that, but this is one of the reasons why this relationship between the U.S. and India, this was a blossoming relationship. Every president since Bill Clinton has left the relationship with India in stronger shape than what he inherited. But Biden is leaving a damaged relationship to his successor to mend, and it's largely because Biden's own memory issues resulted in him ceding decision-making to his inner circle. That's very unfortunate, but I think whoever is elected will have to make it a priority to improve relations with India, because if the U.S. wants to avoid strategic overreach, given the fact that it's facing escalating rivalry with Russia and with China, it needs India, especially if it wants to pivot to the Indo-Pacific. It needs India more than ever. And therefore, it makes strategic sense for the U.S. to make this relationship with India robust.
No, but do they want to make this relationship with India robust? That's the point I was coming to. If it's Kamala Harris, because of all that is happening, you know, whether it was quoting the Khalistanis before Prime Minister Narendra Modi's state visit for the visit to the United States of America, or all these Khalistani allegations that have come up, and the Khalistanis rearing their heads in the United States and in Canada, is there a pattern to all of this? Is the United States trying to send out some kind of a message to India, Professor Chilani?
It appears that in the twilight of the Biden administration, people in his inner circle have tried to leverage the Khalistan militancy against India. They have, in fact, they set up Trudeau against India.
Yes.
They supplied sketchy intelligence to Ottawa, which prompted Trudeau to make his allegation against India in September last year. And now Trudeau admits that he was relying not on hard evidence, but on raw intelligence when he made that allegation against India, triggering a downward spiral in Canada-India relations. So we have seen a sort of a pattern. For example, look at this gentleman called Panon. He's been allowed to make terrorist threats against India from his base in New York with impunity. Imagine if India were to allow a U.S. designated terrorist to operate freely from Indian soil and make threats against American airlines repeatedly. How would the Americans react?
Yep.
And yet this guy has been in the vanguard to ignite communal passions, even among the Indian diaspora in Canada and the US. For example, these two temple attacks in Canada last weekend, one in Ontario, one in British Columbia.
Yes.
Those two attacks were organized by Panun's group, the Sikhs for Justice, which is an India-designated terrorist group. So they're allowing these elements to operate freely from North America to embarrass India. And then we have these other things that have happened in recent months. We have had the U.S. involvement in regime change in Bangladesh, which is a very major development. It appears to be designed to keep India boxed in.
Absolutely.
Boxed in, in South Asia. Instead of creating a democratic transition in Bangladesh, what has emerged is jihadist chaos in Bangladesh, with far-reaching consequences beyond Bangladesh's borders, especially for India.
Yeah. Aviruk and Lenka White, let me bring you in. You've been covering the White House, you've been covering the United States, and will Kamala Harris continue with these policies of Joe Biden? Should she be elected? Is there anything to indicate that she may be different?
A great question. I don't know if she knows if she's any different. You know, whenever they were asking her how is she going to differ from Joe Biden, her first question was, well, I'm not a Joe Biden, you know, I'm not a man. And second answer was usually, I will bring different experience because I have a different background than Joe Biden. But at no occasion she was actually able to answer how is she going to be different. And of course, even Democratic voters would like to see Kamala Harris behaving differently, because they also notice that the prices are higher. Then they don't want to continue with Biden's style of economy. They would like to see changes. And also, of course, everyone noticed that she didn't do great on immigration. There is a large number of immigrants. So even Democratic voters would like to see changes. Definitely. I personally think that most of the Democratic voters, they actually don't like Trump to that degree that they have to opt for Harris, because genuinely, if you hear her speeches, she doesn't have that much to offer. Apart of the fact that it's a woman, she's presentable, she is calm, she's not having the rough statements like Trump, but that's about it. She doesn't really have a good pitch.
Okay, but you know, in her ancestral village in India, there's tremendous excitement. And Aviruk and Lenka, I want to just quickly play out this report that comes from a very tiny hamlet called Thulasendrapuram in Tamil Nadu. And in this Thulasendrapuram, India Today spoke to several people who are actually super excited about Kamala Harris breaking that glass ceiling and becoming the first woman ever to enter White House as president of the United States of America. They're very excited about it. They're hopeful. Listen in.
We are reporting from the Sri Dharmashastra temple in Thulasendrapuram, which is the ancestral village of US Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris. If I have to speak about this village, this is the village where Kamala Harris's maternal grandfather, P.V. Gopalan, used to live before he moved to Chennai. And this temple, it also has a stone board which mentions the name of Kamala Harris having donated rupees 5,000 for the temple consecration in the year 2013-2014. It also mentions the names of her aunt, Sarla Gopalan, and her grandfather, P.V. Gopalan, for donating money for the temple works and renovation works, etc. Now, as far as this temple is concerned, the villagers of Thulasendrapuram, they've been offering special prayers. Special pujas are being held in the mornings and in the evenings, praying for Kamala Harris's victory, because it's a high-stake battle that has, played out in the United States. And the results, of course, we're just hours away from knowing who will be the next U.S. president. And I'm joined by the villagers here. It includes the local councillor, the villagers, and someone from US, Chicago. She's Joy. She's come from Chicago all the way to Thulasendrapuram, and she's taken a room right outside the temple and staying there for the night so that she can be associated in some way or the other to Kamala Harris on the day the US presidential election results would be out. You're rooting for Kamala Harris. Tell us why. Why do you think she'll make the next president, and why do you think that'll be the right choice as far as the U.S. is concerned?
Well, Kamala is a uniter, and I believe that that's what we need. She's promised to have advisors from the Republican Party, and I also think that's what we need, enough with the division, let's unite.
Normally, Tamil Nadu insisting for women's empowerment. If she's come just US, no, Sunita Williams, see, she's heading for US NASA space, like that. Everyone, it inspiring every individuals, ladies. So normally, if she got elected, no. So Indo-US relation will be definitely improve.
That, of course, is the sense from the ground, the mood on the ground. All of them really praying for Kamala Harris's victory. It was not an easy election, and it has huge consequences and implications, not just for the US, but for the rest of for the world. And that's the reason why they say every prayer counts, and that's why we're stepping in, praying for Kamala Harris. And they say because of Kamala Harris, Tulasendrapuram has also, become more evident on the global map. With video journalist Daniel, this is Shilpa Nair for India Today.
So, Tulasendrapuram in Tamil Nadu is praying for Kamala Harris to enter the White House, but it all depends on the voters. And I quickly want to cut across to Rohit Sharma, India Today's Rohit Sharma, a man on ground, getting us the latest information from Washington, D.C. and speaking to our team across the United States of America. Rohit, any indications? What's the buzz on ground? Is it very exciting the way it was made out to be? Dead heat? Equally, tremendous excitement on either side?
Well, look, we've gotten reports from everybody in America that the Republican voters are turning up to vote. Something President Biden has been talking about all along on his campaign. He's always said, please turn out to vote. And that's what we're seeing. I mean, the polling center that I've been at stationed this morning from 6:30 a.m., I have seen more Republican voters come in than Democrats. Now, some Democrats leaders are saying this is because Democratic voters usually use mail-in ballots and, they already voted early, which is a possibility. But looks like at least on the day of the event, the Republican voters are coming in. And I've spoken to some of them and, what issues are the most important to them. I probably should say about 80% of them have said immigration and open borders. And that relates to, burden on U.S. economy, that relates to immigrants taking jobs, that relates to crime. And I think these are some of the talking points that President Trump has used on campaign trail. I think he's kept his message very simple, Gaurav. He's always said, were you better off 4 years ago? And I think a lot of Americans have taken to that. I think that is one of the reasons why Republican voters have come out and they're voting a lot today. Also, one Democrat that I encountered, obviously not wanting to talk on camera, said they voted for President Trump because they believe that they do not agree with the fact that Biden and Kamala Harris, the way that all played out with, she got the nomination without fighting primaries. She said Democrats have been talking about preserving democracy. How was that democracy when she got the nomination without even going to primaries? So people do have long memories there. It looks like, as President Trump also said this morning, very calm, very composed, very disciplined. He thinks he's going to win this. We'll have to wait and watch the Gaurav.
Oh, absolutely. And you'll know that first. You're a man on ground. Stay with me for a moment. Let me get Aviruk and Lenka to quickly respond to some of this anecdotal information that's also coming in. Aviruk, will immigration, and since she was the czar, as many commentators say, prove to be her Achilles heel in these elections? Or will the women voters be able to see her through as she hopes?
I would agree with you that immigration is sort of top of the mind issue. And this is one, I think there's general agreement that the Biden administration, which included Harris, of course, could have done much better than it actually did. Now, but this election to me is not about Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. It's actually a referendum on the US itself. It's about character, a return to decency.